Good morning, good evening, good night, whenever you have clicked on this video. Hi, hello, I'm Alyssa. I go to the University of Texas as a sophomore. As a junior. I'm currently in finals week, and this is really not my usual content. But if you do want to learn about differentiating between the courts, I'm your girl and I'm your host, Alyssa Jimenez. So, let's just get right into it, y'all. As I've started this filming process and alongside this the editing process, I have now realized that there is a glitch in my system and my video will be a lot slower than my audio, so I apologize if that throws you off or it triggers you. I understand. I'm a better editor than this, okay? I promise. Now, let's get into the actual information that we want to learn about today. So, what are the different type of courts? What umbrellas do they fall underneath? We have our county level, we have our state level, and we have our federal level. So the county bubble has our constitutional court, our statutory court, and then our statutory probate court. And then we also have that state bubble that has our trial court, appellate court, and our state supreme court. Once we get to the federals, we have districts, we've got the appeals, and then we have the U.S. Supreme Court with the 9 justices that get appointed by our president that are then serving a lifetime term underneath this federal umbrella, and, you know, we can't really do much about it unless we are in the presidential situation. So, without further ado, let's keep it going. Let's get into the more in-depths of the county level court system. Before I delve into the rest of this PowerPoint, I just want to preface this by saying that every single one of these slides has so much information, so if you need to pause to read or to, you know, write down some notes if you're writing notes, feel free. Also, I also want to point out the fact that there is 2 slides per every single one of the courts as I solve the general and the many complexities underneath the general. Anyway. I fear it's time to get ready and to get into all of the information. With every court, there is a purpose, but for county, it's simply entry level and it just provides legal remedies for all of the local issues that are currently happening. And this structure is pretty simple, to be honest. These judges are appointed within the county as all of the people within the county are able to vote. These counties usually have specialized courts and specialized court systems. So one county might specialize in family law, the other might specialize in traffic. Or there's just one really good county that's really good at juvenile because they have so many delinquents running around. As I delve into the jurisdiction, I found that El Paso as a county cannot do anything outside of itself. So if there was something that happened with an El Paso citizen in another county all the way over here in California, El Paso has nothing to do with what's going on over here. You may be from El Paso, but there is no jurisdiction to get you back home to El Paso. So just think about that the next time you try to, you know, do something outside of the country, because you don't want to deal with that court, okay? And then I also found out that the county level can only pretty much handle misdemeanors, small civil dispute, and then preliminary hearings towards the big hearings that we hear at the state level, and family law. I will not lie, making this little chart healed my heart, okay? So as with every umbrella, as I was saying in the prior slide before this, we have little subsidies. These subsidies, at least for the county level, is the constitutional county court, the statutory county court, and the statutory probate court. I made this little, you know, chart so that way it was easier to differentiate them. We have our origin. So our constitutional county is a Texas Constitution. Its jurisdiction is pretty much generalized, and then it focuses on the administrative and judicial part. As we go through these, you'll realize that the statutory and the statutory probate court pretty much go hand in hand, And our constitutional county court is simply just so that we have some sort of structure and someone overlooking these other two. So when going over statutory county court, I found out that there was it's Texas legislature. I did it specifically on Texas courts. And then it's broader and it varies by the statute, and it's primarily judicial. And then when we go into the probate court, it's also a Texas legislator. And then it's also probate and guardianship matters exclusively. So what this means is that it's family law and divorce and all of that. So if you have a prenup, this is where it's going to go. This is where your court session is going to be handled. It's going to be handled under the statutory probate court. I suck at saying things. I apologize in advance. Obviously, the focus is guardianship, mental health, and probate. We have officially upgraded to the state level courts. So you might have noticed it's the same question from, I don't know, 2 slides ago. Apologies. This just helps to solve the general bubble. When going through this general bubble of state law, the state legislation and how it's different from any of the federal and county courts, the purpose is simply to enforce state law and resolve disputes and appeals within the legal framework of the state. Our structure for the states vary. They don't vary, actually. They don't vary at all. These Supreme Courts have the highest judicial authority within the state. And they also include trial, which is basically district circuit courts, which is appeal courts. And then we also have our jurisdiction, which is what kind of cases can they, what can they take over? So we obviously have appeal cases from the county level. And then we also have our serious criminal cases, serial killers that are going over state lines. And then we have larger civil cases, which can be pretty much scuffed up to bad, prenup. And then we also have family law disputes and probate cases, which is technically guardianship if someone was to appeal from the county level because they did not get the state of custody that they wanted. So I fear we have made it to a point where this is literally the biggest chart in this entire presentation. So bear with me. When going over the different state level courts, I really wanted to highlight the purpose, the jurisdiction, the case types, the structure, and how the judges are appointed and how many you would expect to have at that level sitting in front of you if you were to ever go to any of these courts. So starting with trial courts, it's the lower court. It handles initial cases, including criminal, civil, family, and probate. This is your original jurisdiction, so they had it first. So the people who were in this trial had to appeal in order to get to that appellate court. Before I get to that, they deal with criminal, civil, family, probate, and smaller claims court cases. And then our structure for this trial court is general, and pretty much it's divided between general and specialized courts. So if you had a family law, it would go to a family law court. If you had a juvenile case, it would go to a juvenile court. And then these judges were elected and or appointed. Moving on, we've got the intermediate appellate courts. This is our appeals courts. So they review appeals for the trial courts, which is the court below us, and it ensures the proper application of the law. So it just makes sure that they're following the Constitution for all that it's worth. And then they aren't allowed new trials, so they only review the cases that are handed to them. So it's literally just appeals court. And then it deals with appeals and civil and criminal cases. When you're going over the structure, this is usually something certain states skip depending on the state, truly. It's only one level of appeals. So if you were to ever appeal in the state after going to state court, if they didn't have this, you would just go straight to the state Supreme Court, which sounds a bit scary, to be honest. Usually this case, if it's appealed, and they do have an appeals level within the state, you'll usually be met with a panel of 3. Now, heading into the state Supreme Court, it's the highest court in the state. It reviews the significant appeals, so anything that has to do and interprets the state law, whether it's in a bad way or unconstitutional way, it makes it to the Supreme Court. And then as we move on to the jurisdiction, it only focuses on the cases of constitutional issues. And the case types really is disputes affecting state laws, death penalty cases. So basically landmark cases. And then there's only one Supreme Court per state, and their decision's final unless you really just decide, I don't like this answer that you're giving me. Take me to the US Supreme Court, which is our next one. Usually you have 5 to 9 justices when you hit the US State Supreme Court, so pretty much like our federal, but just a state level court. We have been upgraded to federal level courts, baby! Something new? No. Just the same structure questions. I'm kidding, y'all. Let's get into it, shall we? So, federal courts. This is my favorite system because I love true crime videos, and usually when it gets to the point of federal and it's a landmark case, the evidence just goes so crazy. If you know, you know. Obviously, every court has a purpose. For the US federal courts, it's to interpret and apply the US Constitution. It's literally just a little checks and balances on our state courts just to make sure that they are actually doing their job correctly. Checks and balances is literally the basis of our entire government. And when going into the structure of this federal government, I found that we have district courts, a court of appeals, and a Supreme Court. All of these should be familiar to you. If they're not, I don't know how to help you there, kid. These federal justices get appointed by our president. And then they are approved by our Senate. And they serve lifetime terms. So literally until one of them kicks the bucket, we're not getting another one. National court level is the federal Supreme Court. So this federal jurisdiction only addresses bigger issues that involve the federal Constitution. So that sucks. I would love to see our justices not handle a landmark case. If you've heard the term landmark case, it basically has to deal with constitutional rights. That's literally all the cases that are brought to the Supreme Court. So yeah. And if it has to do with anything that's stealing, fraud, it has to be over $75,000 worth of fraud for it to get to this case or to this court. And it has to involve the US government and foreign entity to be involved in any sort of cases. So you will not be seeing the US Supreme Court in a civil case. Not ever. Welcome to another chart, ladies and gentlemen. I know you hate to see it. I know you hate to see it. This one is actually pretty decent though. We go over district courts, courts of appeal, and then the Supreme Court. I also wanted to capitalize on the fact that we have some kind of purpose. We also go over the jurisdiction of these courts and the case types along with the structure and how long these judges are appointed for. As you'll notice, the answer is all the same for the judges at the bottom there. Yeah, all of these judges are appointed for life. They have the most stable job ever. You just better hope they don't kick the bucket. I'm kidding. Let's go for district courts. So district courts basically serve as a trial court, and it's the original jurisdiction. So they had they probably had that case first before it made it to the Supreme Court. So they had to be like, okay, no, this has to go to the Supreme Court for it to go to the courts of appeal. And then The case types that they, get in on a day-to-day is federal and civil cases, usually involving diversity of citizenship. So it has to deal with race, it has to do with color, and I know that sucks. Because every single one of their cases is at least controversial in some kind of way. There is 94 federal districts, so, if you fall under a certain district, you're probably going to go to that court. If you were to ever appeal from the state, you'd hit the district court that you're assigned to. Now, courts of appeals. This is when the trial courts, our original court that we just went over, you didn't like their answer. So now you're hitting courts of appeal. So courts of appeal reviews the appeals from the district courts, and it has appellate jurisdiction over district court decisions. So what this means is that whatever the district court said, and if they say, oh, this is right, I want what the district court said, that's my same answer, and they stamp it with that, you have to take the state's jurisdiction, the courts of appeals jurisdiction to the Supreme Court, to which case the Supreme Court can overrule and overrun if they wanted to. Going and following into the case types, so they deal with legal errors, constitutional issues, and problems with procedures. So like if the district courts didn't man it the right way and they didn't go over the right evidence, or they didn't consider the right evidence and you were to appeal it and to bring more evidence into the Court of Appeals, they could probably override whatever the heck you just got given in the last court. And then usually when you go to the Court of Appeals, it's a panel of 3, and they are also appointed for life. Let's talk about the highest court though. The highest court deals with landmark cases. Landmark cases. That's how we got the Miranda rights. Brown versus the Board of Education. That one's a good one. Literally so many more. So our highest Supreme Court resolves anything that has to do with the Constitution, and it has appellate jurisdiction, and it also has limited jurisdiction of original jurisdiction because, they're not the first person to get the case. If not really, they are the first person to get the case. The case types that they deal with are the disputes of national importance. So usually when it gets to the Supreme Court, you can probably expect a couple of cameras in there. Why? Well, the world wants to know what they're going to come out with because we have 9 justices on there and it's only one court. So that means whatever they say, it's point blank freaking final. You are not going to get any other answer that matters besides this answer. So, guys, we've made it to the review portion of this video. Hello. Thank you so much for watching up until this point. So, I have a couple of general talking points. I just want to establish that there are different levels of court. We have county, we have the state, we have the federal. County has a bunch of umbrellas beneath them. Constitutional, statutory, and statutory probate courts. Their jurisdiction is only within their county. State, we have trial, appellate, and state supreme. Their jurisdiction appeals from the county courts, and then federal has trial, appeals, and Supreme Court of the U.S. government. And their jurisdiction is pretty much anything involving a national matter. So you won't see any non-landmark cases get to the U.S. Supreme Court level. So here is my beautiful references. Look at them, love them. They're also going to be included in my description if you want to go check those out. Well, we've officially made it to the end of this video and to the end of this PowerPoint. I just want to thank you guys so much for learning with me. And if you liked this, hit the like button and subscribe because, I post other content other than this stuff. So yeah, thank you so much for watching.